Greetings and salutations. I am Commissioner Robert Benson Branham. Oh, let me tell you about a home far away from the skies. Let me tell you about a home far away. Let me tell you about an uncloudy day. Welcome to Bloomingdale. Welcome. Madam Mayor, you are not a stranger to Bloomingdale or to Crispus Attucks Park. We are delighted you and your team are able to share some time here today on behalf of the residents of the District of Columbia. Let me say, for historical context, Crispus Attucks, a black man, became the first casualty of the American Revolution when he was shot and killed in the Boston Massacre. Throughout history, Crispus Attucks has been celebrated not just as one of the first martyrs in the fight for American independence, but also as a symbol of black Americans and residents of the district's struggle for freedom, equality, and statehood. Finally, before I take my leave, I want to call three names into the atmosphere: to flow in the wind, to sparkle under the sun, to shine in the moonlight, and to rest in our hearts and memory. Shanae Marie Taylor, George Valentine, and Muriel Bowser. These three, a goddaughter, a colleague, a daughter of friends, and a sister of the mayor, represent the district's losses to COVID-19. While they may have left us with heartbreaks and tears, they ascended into heaven and into glory with smiles. Welcome again to Bloomingdale, a great community where faith is key, where faith is a part of our culture, and a community where faith brings us together. Our faith is our destiny. I wish everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Madam Mayor, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Let's give the Commissioner a big round of applause, and it's great to see everybody here. I am always happy to be in Ward 5, and I am so happy to see so many neighbors and also members of our public safety team, both ours locally, Washington, D.C., and members of our federal law enforcement team. We're also joined by friends from our package delivery system. And as we approach the holidays, that becomes even more important to all of us. So we will acknowledge representatives from UPS and FedEx and Amazon, I believe, have joined us as well. So today we're talking public safety, and after I speak, you're going to hear directly from the Chief of Police, who will provide us with some tips from MPD about avoiding crimes of opportunity. We will also hear from Chief Donnelly about what residents can do to prevent holiday celebrations from turning tragic. So first, I want to say a few words about how we are approaching city and the crime right now, and that's urgently approaching crime. I sent a letter to the community last week about how we are pushing back, especially against violent crime. And as I said then, I'll repeat today, we are literally throwing every resource at this issue at our disposal. We know that COVID-19 has upended so many parts of our lives. And unfortunately, it also upended the very fragile public safety ecosystem in our community. And we need to keep pushing on all fronts until we see a positive change. As I shared last week, we will continue to deliver new and aggressive strategies to curb gun violence, to get guns out of our community, and to hold people accountable when they engage in violence in our community. And we won't allow people to continue to endanger the lives of our children and terrorize our communities. But more than responding to violence, it's also important that we prevent it before it happens. And one of the most effective ways that we can do that and save lives is to get guns out of the hands of people who have no business having a gun in their possession. So today, in partnership with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosive, we're enhancing one of the tools we use to get illegal guns out of the community. And through this partnership, we will increase the reward for turning in specific types of guns. Already, people can get $2,500 if they help us recover an illegal gun. Now, through this partnership, we're increasing the award by an additional $5,000 when people help us recover ghost guns and other guns that have been modified, which Chief Conti will tell you more about. This year, we've already recovered 2,000 illegal guns from our community. But unfortunately, there's still a lot out there. And we want to get to them before someone uses them to kill someone else or injure someone else or use them in another terrible crime in our city. So if you know someone who has an illegal gun, or you know where an illegal gun is being stored, we need you to report it and report it as soon as possible. And in doing so, you may earn up to $7,500. You can let us know anonymously by using the tip line as well at 727-9099 or text us at 50411. These rewards are one way we encourage the community to work with MPD. Residents and businesses can also help MPD by participating in our private security program. We've been at this program for about 4 years. Bloomingdale is one of those neighborhoods that were quick adopters of the private security program, receiving rebates from the government that in some cases cover the entire cost of installing these cameras. And these cameras can help us solve crimes when they happen, which means they can prevent future crimes. So with that, I'm going to turn to the Chief of Police, followed by the Fire Chief, Chief Conti.
Good morning, everyone. Before I bring my official remarks, I'd like to invite my partner up from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, Charlie Patterson, to bring some words. You know, when I reach out to our partners in the federal government, Charlie is one of those partners that always says, yes, how can we help? And when we reached out to Charlie, in response to the mayor's charge to do everything that we possibly can to impact violent crime in our city, we reached out to Charlie. He was, yes, Chief, what can I do? How can I help? And we came up with something that I am very proud of, and very proud to call Charlie a partner and friend. So, Charlie, if you want to come up.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning. I'm Charlie Patterson, the Special Agent in charge of the Washington Field Division of ATF. We at ATF want the D.C. community to know that we are extremely concerned about what is going on in the district. Because we as community members live, work, and raise our children here also. ATF works every day with the Metropolitan Police Department to combat gun violence to make our community safer. The gun violence has to end, and we will continue to meet the challenges of disrupting this vicious shooting cycle. We need support and cooperation from you, the parents who have lost children, the family members of innocent bystanders, the friends of friends who were killed, and most importantly, if you yourselves fear for yourself or a loved one that may become a victim of gun violence. We need you to do your part, and we will continue to do ours. I pledge ATF's full support to DC residents and MPD so that you can enjoy a safe so that you are safe and can enjoy all that the nation's capital has to offer. To that end, ATF is offering a $5,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of individuals possessing or trafficking illegal firearms, privately made firearms commonly known as ghost guns, and handgun conversion devices, which are commonly known as switches or auto sears. Having these illegal weapons and parts on our streets is detrimental to the safety and well-being of the community, and we see the consequences all too often. We know that 25% of all firearms and shell casings recovered in the district are ballistically linked to other shootings that include homicides and serious assaults. We need to find out who the trigger pullers are and how they're getting these firearms to the district. We know some people have information, and we are asking you to come forward to do the right thing and be a part of the solution. If you have information, contact MPD at 202-727-9099 or text 50411. It is important for individuals to understand that they can remain anonymous. This is a plea for help. ATF is committed to solving this particular problem that we have. As the mayor said and the chief said, you have our undying support on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie. Again, good morning. I'm Robert Conti III, Chief of Police of the Metropolitan Police Department. I'd also like to recognize the presence of our Deputy Mayor, Chris Ddot, who's here, John Donnelly, our Chief of the Fire and EMS, as well as Director Chris Rodriguez, who is the Director of Homeland Security Emergency Management Agency. Thank you, Charlie, for your continued support and the additional reward money from the ATF. So let's talk about exactly why we are here. The Metropolitan Police Department has recovered over 2,000 illegal firearms in the District of Columbia so far in 2021. That already exceeds the number of illegal firearms that we recovered all of last year. We have exceeded that number. And we want to reiterate that MPD is partnering with the ATF Washington Field Division to combat violence by targeting illegal firearms. Through this effort, we want to incentivize community members to assist law enforcement. The ATF is offering an additional reward of up to $5,000 for the recovery of illegal firearms and arrest of individuals who are trafficking in these firearms. So what does that mean? Before, if you call in a tip to the police department for the arrest of a person with a legal firearm, oftentimes what would happen, and what I've been hearing from community members is, well, you know, it's arrest and conviction, a person has to go to jail, and then the citizen would be afraid about testifying in court and that kind of thing. Well, through this program, citizens would not have to come and testify in court. Citizens would not have to, everything remains anonymous. A person calls in a tip, that tip leads to an arrest. Once that person, the citizen who calls that tip in, that person will get a number. Once an arrest is made, that person gets paid. That citizen gets paid for the information that they provide to the Metropolitan Police Department and ATF if it leads to the arrest of an individual. We're not talking about conviction. We're not talking about waiting 3 months. The minute that we make that arrest, you call that information in. We'll verify that through our tip source that the tip number that you provided led to an arrest. We're willing to pay citizens to get these illegal firearms off the street. And you may say, hey, Chief, well, why do we want to pay so much? Because it's that important. How much is a life worth in the District of Columbia? How much is a life worth? Right? Because what I can tell you is that one firearm, and as Charlie mentioned, 25% of the ballistics that we see in the District of Columbia are firearms that are changing hands, moving about through different communities. How many lives are taken as a result of these firearms and the bullets that are in them? One firearm with 50 rounds of ammunition in it. How many lives are disrupted and destroyed as a result of the use of that one firearm? So how do we get to where it is we want to get to? One firearm at a time. Out of any community in the District of Columbia where a resident is willing to be a partner with us in fighting this violent crime. I hear from residents all the time, Chief, well, you know, we know people in the neighborhood are carrying guns, but, you know, we're afraid to call in. Well, I'm providing an opportunity so this does not have to be a spectator sport. People can actively participate in making communities safe and be paid for doing that. Now, this effort that Charlie talked about, we will see that through to the end of the year. We want to really push with the $5,000 additional reward from the ATF. The Metropolitan Police Department plans to continue on with a $2,500 investment after we finish with the ATF's effort, because it is that important. So I see Sam's eyebrow just kind of went for a minute. So let me make sure I explain it to you, Sam. So right now, what we're going to be doing, right? if a resident calls in a tip, right, for any gun, that leads to the arrest of an individual, no conviction needed, no coming to testify needed, that arrest, a person is eligible for up to $2,500 right now, right? Now, the additional part, the ATF's piece in this, they're looking for specific guns, ghost guns for the additional $5,000, ghost guns, and guns that have those, what we call giggle switches, Glock switches on them. ATF will pay up to $5,000 for those. So once this initiative, this initial push is over through the end of December, and the ATF, they're going to go back. I'm going to check Charlie's pockets to see if he has anything left for me. If he doesn't, at the very minimum, we want to continue to pay residents up to $2,500 for information that leads to the arrest of individuals who have illegal firearms in our community. You follow what I'm saying, Sam? You got me? All right, good. Now, the mayor and Special Agent Patterson, they both highlighted the phone number and the text tip line. But I want to give it one more time for residents, right? Because trust me, I hope that people are really contemplating this. It's Christmas season, so I hope people are really kind of contemplating this and thinking about individuals that are in communities with illegal firearms. Call 202-727-9099. If you know of someone in your community right now carrying an illegal firearm, 202-727-9099, or text us anonymously at 50411. Now, I would encourage you to receive the reward money to call the 727-9099 number, because that way, once you get your tip number, we can track and be able to make sure that residents get paid for that. There's, again, there's a tip number that you get. We don't need your name. All we need is that number to enable residents to be paid. All right, so I just want to be very clear there that we need residents to call that information in. Now, the other reason that we are here, this neighborhood where we are, and many other neighborhoods across the District of Columbia, just like this one, are oftentimes impacted by package thefts at this time of year, right? So we see that packages are being delivered, Amazon, our partners, UPS, and the rest of the partners that are here, dropping packages off, they're leaving them at the front door. Well, we have bad guys who go Christmas shopping, basically going up and down the streets in some communities and seeing packages that have been left out, sometimes for days. In my community where I live, neighbors, we try to look out for each other. If you see a package out, you call your neighbor. Or sometimes other neighbors, if there's an agreement, can take that package in the house for their neighbor so that it's not left out on the front porch, unguarded unnecessarily, and we end up with a crime that does not need to happen. This is a crime of opportunity, but it is a crime that we can prevent. We can prevent by taking some of the measures that I'm mentioning here, just removing those packages or giving special instructions to the delivery company in terms of where you want your package left. We have to be very intentional there, because very easily, I mean, you can have 10 crimes on this block, just this block on the other side here. If a person goes down the street, pops out of a car, snatch a package and throws it back into the car and takes off. I mean, it's that quick, it's that simple, and it happens, unfortunately, more times than we'd like to see here in the District of Columbia. So we want to put that out to community members to make sure that we are very much focused in on the package theft issue. We also want to focus in on the issue of cars that are oftentimes, as it's getting cold out, people are leaving their cars running unattended because they're trying to warm them up in the morning and get the kids in the car. That is a big no-no, and we cannot stress that enough. I tell you, I cringe. My heart cringes every time we hear about an instance where, a kid was in a car, and whether it's in the District of Columbia or someplace else, but a kid is in the car, the parent left the car running, mom or dad ran back in just for a second to grab something, you come out and that car is gone. I do not want to imagine what that feels like as a parent. So I would just encourage community members to make sure that we're doing everything that we can so that we're not leaving our vehicles running unattended. That is very important. The other thing, the other 2 points that I wanted to make, we have safe zones. You can use the Metropolitan Police Department's police districts as safe zones for those of you who oftentimes will use Craigslist or those types of online entities where you're going to meet a person and you're going to purchase something. A lot of times we see robberies that happen as a result of that when individuals are meeting random people, some person you just kind of met online. If you want to meet a person online because there's going to be an exchange or payment for goods, please meet that person at one of the area police stations, and hopefully as a result of that interaction, if it's intended to be something nefarious, that person will be thrown off and may not engage you in that space. The last point that I would make is invest in the mayor's private security camera rebate program. I cannot tell you how much footage from video cameras it assists in solving crimes in the Metropolitan Police Department. Just before I came here, I was reviewing some video. We had a robbery spree. Individuals had robbed about 2 or 3 different establishments in the District of Columbia. And because of the camera that the individuals had there, the entire robbery was captured on video. The persons were apprehended, the whole 9 yards, very clear images. But that information that we receive from video cameras, it goes a long way to solving crimes and making our city safer. So whether you're a business or whether you're a resident, please, the program is there for us to take advantage of. I hope that all of you will, if you have not, and I hope that you will consider doing it if you have not as well. So that is all that I have. I'm going to invite my colleague up here to talk about the other pieces of public safety through his lens, through the DC Fire and EMS. John?
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm John Donnelly, Chief of the Fire and EMS Department. I would like to thank the Mayor for having us out here today to talk about this very important time of year. It's a time we need to come together to celebrate, but it's also a dangerous time of year. I'd also like to thank Chief Conti for everything he's doing. The passion that he just displayed for us is what we all need to stop this. And we have a long-standing partnership with the ATF to investigate the cause of fires. So Charlie Patterson, thank you for your help. Everything you've heard here this morning comes down to saving lives. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and focus on keeping you and your loved ones safe inside your homes. Thanksgiving is only 3 days away, and it is the peak for home cooking fires, with more than 3 times the daily average for such incidents across the United States. Home cooking fires can spread fast. They can lead to destruction of property, injuries, and even death. In 2019, U.S. fire departments responded to an estimated 1,400 cooking fires on Thanksgiving Day. And nationally, unintended cooking was by far the leading contributing factor in cooking fires and fire deaths. Here in the district, tragically this year, we have seen 12 fire fatalities. All but one of these deaths involve vulnerable populations, persons over 60 and under the age of 12. And what that means is if you know people that are vulnerable, that have problems moving or getting out of their house in the event of a fire, please think about them. Help make sure their house is as fire safe as it can be. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And the causes of our fires, our fire deaths, that our fire investigators determined. 8 of the 12 fatal fires were accidental, and 1 resulted from a cooking fire. The sobering fact is that only half of these homes where we experienced a loss of life had a working smoke alarm present. Our thoughts remain with the families. Anyone who has lost someone this year, whether due to illness, violence, fire, whatever the cause. This holiday season is likely to be a difficult and painful one. Please know that the men and women of DC Fire and EMS hold you in our thoughts and prayers. As we approach the holiday season, typically cooking fires increase, and we simply must do everything we can to avoid loss of life. That is going to take every single one of us taking necessary precautions ahead of time and using common sense in our safety practices. Today, check your smoke alarms. Hit the test button on each smoke alarm and make sure it is working. It is an action that takes seconds and could save your life. When it comes to cooking for Thanksgiving, let's talk about the basics. Never leave cooking food unattended. Use a timer to remind you that you're cooking. Be alert when cooking. If you are sleepy, if taking medicine or drugs or alcohol, that makes you drowsy, don't cook, plain and simple. If a small grease fire starts, slide a lid over the pan to smother the flame. Turn off the burner and leave the pan covered until it is completely cool. Never use water on a grease fire. Have a kid-free zone of at least 3 feet around the stove in areas where hot food or drink is prepared or carried. Keep anything flammable away from the stove when cooking. Towels, oven mitts, wooden utensils, food packaging, anything that can catch fire, please keep it away from your stove tops. And don't store anything in your oven. If you do have a cooking fire, get out, close the door behind you, and try and contain the fire and stay out of the house. Call 911. Let the men and women of DC Fire and EMS do their jobs while you and your families are safely outside. Things can be replaced, but you can't. Thank you.
Those were good tips. Good tips. So I want to thank everybody for being a part of this discussion about us doing everything possible and looking for new ways and more aggressive ways to remove illegal guns and keep our community safer. So with that, we'll take a few questions. Any questions? Press first, and then if there are community questions, we'll take community questions. Mark?
Yeah, I'm wondering about the success thus far. How many of the guns, you say you've recovered thousands of guns this year, how many of them came about as a result of the reward that was currently in place? Do you know how many rewards you've paid out, and just, how successful this tool has been?
Yeah, Mark, I don't have the that reward number. We'll get that for you. But I'll tell you this: we are paying out money. We do pay out money. People do call information in. I think one of the things that's not widely known in community, which is why I wanted to reinforce the MPD part of this. Most people get attached to the arrest, conviction, piece of it. We're not talking about conviction. We're not talking about trial. I want to be very clear about this. We're just talking about people being arrested for illegal firearms. The key is that we recover the illegal firearm, but we'll get you that number. We are paying out money.
And Chief,
yes, sir.
What if somebody doesn't want to turn someone in, but they want to turn a gun in?
We'll pay for that too.
How does that work?
Call in the same tip line, say, hey, there's a gun, it's at this location. Now, it won't be $2,500 necessarily. We'll evaluate the tip, the information, and we'll pay out. But we will pay for that information as well for anyone who wants to call in an illegal firearm in the District of Columbia.
And my last one is, what if somebody wanted to turn in an illegal firearm but was afraid they might get arrested on the way to the police station, or they might be questioned about it. It might come back to them in some way.
Yeah,
it was a family member's gun.
Yeah, we'll evaluate those on a case by case. And this is what I don't want to do, Mark. So, in the past, right, we've learned from, we've had gun buybacks in the past, right? And you'll get people from all over bringing, firearms that, grandpa passed away, he had a firearm under the, mattress or something, and they come, turning in firearms. We'll take it. We certainly want to do that. But we're really talking about, focusing in on bad actors, guns in the wrong hands of people on our streets that make communities unsafe, focusing in on those individuals and not just getting the gun, but getting them off the streets as well. Sam?
I wanted to ask the mayor about the mask mandate today. Obviously, this is the first day of the mask mandate. We're seeing, I guess, the council members made their comment today. New York Times said basically nationwide they're gearing up for a increase in the infections because of the holiday season. Any thoughts there?
Well, Sam, let me just be clear about where we are. Just like we've dialed back and dialed up interventions related to COVID over the last 20 months, that's exactly what we're doing now. And in some places in the District of Columbia, there's no mask mandate imposed by the government, but there are likely mask requirements imposed by private businesses. People in their homes will have mask mandates or mask requirements for their guests, and so on and so on. And that's exactly where we are today. So we are updating. DC Health will continue to provide surveillance metrics on DC Health's web pages at coronavirus.dc.gov. And there will be recommendations, so not mandates, but recommendations related to mask. And those recommendations will rely on a person's vaccination status and the level of community spread. And then people should make decisions based on that. We're also, while dialing back this government-wide universal mask mandate, we are replacing it with recommendations, as we've always had, about layered mitigation strategies. So depending on one's vaccination status and the level of community spread, you should be making decisions about whether you want to have indoor or outdoor activities, or go to indoor or outdoor activities, whether you need to practice social distancing, 6-foot distancing, whether or how you will wear your mask and always have your mask with you, and pay attention to a property owner's or vehicle owners or host requirements for masks. So masks continue to be required by the government in schools. They continue to be required on our transportation services, at airports, on buses, on the metro, in our rideshare vehicles, in our congregate settings. So for all of our homes where our elderly residents live, they're required. Our healthcare facilities, hospitals, doctors' offices, all required. Our congregate settings that we run, like our correctional facilities and the shelter. So all of those things are required.
To the chief, I was wondering, Chief, in connection with the data that MPD collects on the illegal gun use and captures, is there any information indicating how many of those are associated with a link to crimes identified as hate crimes?
No, not that we've been able to, or not that jumps out at me right at this minute, Lou. Legal firearms related to hate crimes. No, nothing jumps out at me. I mean, that's something obviously that we'll continue to look at, but nothing jumps out at me like, this particular stat where we've connected this firearm to this firearm. What we do know is that firearms ballistically in the District of Columbia are probably higher than most other places, most other major cities. Is that correct, Charlie? Our firearms that are in D.C., they pretty much just exchange hands. And you may see a firearm used in an offense in Ward 8 that 4 days from now, in a different hand, that same firearm used in a crime in Ward 5. So we see that, and the rate here in the District of Columbia is it's higher, like I said, than other major cities, which means that those firearms are here, and again, it speaks to that small group of people that we talk about, and making sure that we get that firearm out of the hands of people who should not have them. Thank you for the question, Lou.
Chief, Katie Barlow with Fox 5. In your explanation of the new cash reward system, that it eliminates or reduces the need to testify or even get a criminal conviction, my first question is, how often are prosecutors relying on that type of testimony to get convictions in these gun-related crimes? And is there any concern that reducing that requirement might lead to fewer effective criminal prosecutions or reduced number of criminal convictions related to these gun crimes?
Yeah, so I think with the prosecutors, they certainly want every piece of evidence they can get. DNA off the firearm, they want all of it. And certainly, that's if that's what's needed to move a case forward, that's great. We continue and we will make great cases. We will still go about our procedures as we normally do to make great cases where we don't necessarily need a person to come in and testify in those instances. A lot of these interactions with individuals, it's information that comes in the Metropolitan Police Department. We have an opportunity to observe whatever it is we need to observe, a bulge in that person's jacket or whatever it is, to do the things that we need to do to get that illegal firearm off the street. At the end of the day, yes, I am obviously concerned and want, make sure that we have strong prosecutions, but I'm very, very, very concerned about getting that illegal gun off the street, out of the hands of somebody who shouldn't have it, so that it doesn't unnecessarily impact the lives of district residents. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Mark.
Mark.
Off topic for you, Mayor Bowser. Any reaction to the Washington spirit and any plans for a celebration for the team?
Well, that's exciting, isn't it? And we have another championship in Washington, D.C. We're excited about that. I'm excited about the signal it sends to little girls all over Washington, D.C. Who are participating in soccer, I believe, at increasing numbers. So we are excited about we're excited about the spirit. I would love to have a parade. So I'll start talking about it.
I have one for the chief. You mentioned how important it is to not only get the firearms off the street, but also out of the hands of those people who are using them, especially in violent crimes.
Yep.
But when you mentioned about people passing the firearm, around, how does the department go about making sure that you're arresting all of the individuals that, have been engaged in this if they might not be there when or the person that has it once the tip comes in?
Yeah, so the thing that you have to do, I mean, again, that's why it's not just the information. It's investigation that goes on with that to make sure that we're, getting the gun that's intended. As these firearms are moving about throughout the District of Columbia, other things come into play. For example, the mayor's camera program. If we get a tip in about this guy right here, and he would never do this, but this guy right here in possession of a legal firearm, and he did A, B, and C, and it happened in this alley. Well, one of the things that I would make sure that we do is that we canvass these homes right here, and let's say there is a home or two that has cameras in the back that may see him. And we on many of the networks, you've shown videos that we put out of an individual crouched down, firing a fire, or something like that. Well, once we are able to link those things together, those help us to progress cases. So it's not only about just getting the gun, it's actually, closing out shootings and doing things like that are very helpful to us. Once we recover that illegal firearm, we'll check the ballistics and we'll see, okay, of the crimes or of the times that firearms have been shot in the District of Columbia and shell cases have been recovered, what crimes has this gun been connected to? And it may be 2, 3, or 4. And again, part of that investigation, which builds the bigger case. So again, it goes much further than just getting the gun. It's really the whole investigative piece that happens behind that once we get the gun and once we have a person in custody who was in possession of that firearm. I think that is probably the last question. So you have one more? Okay.
Yes, for the mayor, if I could, Mayor, a little bit off topic. As you may know, the ACLU has filed a lawsuit against the district government regarding alleged incidents of discrimination against a gay employee of the Department of Corrections that LGBTQ activists have described as shocking. And I was just wondering whether your office might be looking into it.
The lawsuit, certainly, and we take and especially when there's a lawsuit involved, Lou, there's not a lot that I can say about it, but we look at all allegations to make sure that we're addressing anything acutely, but also dealing with the lawsuit itself. But let me just say this. Let me kind of take a step back about the jail and our approach to making sure that the jail is working for our residents who have to be there. COVID, as I said, has upended a lot, and the operations of the jail is no different. Our focus has been on the safety of our residents, and we have been able to keep outbreaks of COVID to a minimum at DC jail. But it's also created a lot of strain. The strain being human beings being in a locked facility, restricted in a lot of ways from activity that had been normal in the jail. Being able to have their lawyers visit, or their lawyers coming in and out, or being able to walk around, go outside, take advantage of all the programs that we offer. That is significantly restricted to keep down incidents of COVID. So that presents a lot of strain. It's also a lot of strain on our guards who've also been impacted by COVID, and how we are able to make sure that we have enough people on duty, that they have enough rest, that they're not working too many hours. So we are looking forward to a time when we can roll back some of those COVID protocols in the jail to keep the incidence of COVID down. And I know that will improve the operation. So I just want people to know that Deputy Mayor and I are following this very closely. He has engaged a team that is monitoring in the jail regularly. Excuse me. And that team, he's going to be joined by another one of our federal partners from the United States Marshal Service, so that we have a regular and an independent of DC government voice on the monitoring team, so that we know that the conditions of the jail are what I and DC residents expect. Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm
Chief,
sorry.
Just a couple questions. I know DC has been in partnership with the ATF for a while now. Is what makes this different with the increased reward and just not having to testify?
Yes, that's an important part of it, and the amount, right? The amount. I think $5,000 is significant when you're talking about the reward that's generally out there. For people in communities who call in information and don't have to go to court and testify or anything like that. So this is very significant, significant for our city. And again, I think just another example of how committed our partners in the ATF, how committed they are to the residents of the District of Columbia.
And with the uptick in crime, are there still staffing shortages? What's the update on recruiting new officers?
Yeah, so let's talk about the uptick in crime real quick, and then we'll talk about the staffing shortages. So right now, when we talk about violent crime in our city, the uptick category is the homicides, which is obviously very significant. Assault with dangerous weapons, we're about even where we were same time last year. In fact, there have been almost 100 less people shot in our city this year than there were in the previous year. What has gone up is the lethality of some of those shootings. In other words, the marksmanship, a bullet to the left, a bullet to the right. It really has resulted in the death of some individuals, right? And when you talk about these types of firearms, the type we're talking about getting off the street that have these giggle switches or Glock switches on them that make these firearms fully automatic, it even gives more importance in my mind to why it's important that we get these types of firearms off the streets. Our robberies, we're just slightly below where we were same time last year. So while there has been an uptick in the homicides, and right now I think it's 12 or 13%, which has been consistent with other major cities all around the country, quite frankly. So that all being said, the staffing shortages, yes, they are real. We still have a deficit of personnel. Last year, this time we were at over 3,800 officers. This year we're at 3,562. So that's a significant reduction. But the mayor has. Let us go over a second. But as you know, the mayor requested, after our conversation, requested an additional $11 million to hire additional police officers. Unfortunately, we didn't get the whole $11 million that we asked for. We got about $5 million of that. But that being said, we are hiring. We are hiring police officers. We had our classes to start in August or September. Our first class started. We'll be hiring through the end of this fiscal year. We just expanded our police cadet program a couple of days ago. So to increase that pipeline of police officers, not just our regular police officers, but homegrown kids from right here in the District of Columbia. So the Metropolitan Police Department, we're still open, we're still hiring, and we're looking forward to residents of the District of Columbia really considering law enforcement as a career choice. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Okay. Community?
Yes. Oh,
okay,
yes,
go ahead.
I have a request. Could delivery systems, UPS, Amazon, when they deliver a package, could they please ring the doorbell if there's a doorbell? We have people with children at home, we have retirees, we have people working at home. If they ring the doorbell, we're going to go out there, we're going to treat that package, and then it won't get stolen.
Thank you. So I would just, for those, the benefit of those who could not hear, we have a request from a community member. Thank you for that. I actually heard that at the meeting we were at over the weekend on Saturday in another ward of the city. And the ask is when the delivery companies, and we have representatives here, are delivering packages, can they knock on the door? Can they ring the doorbell? Something that will get the residents' attention to come outside to retrieve the package. As the mayor mentioned, COVID has really upended a lot of things. There are a lot of people who are working from home who would ordinarily not be there, and that knock on the door, that ring of the doorbell could certainly save us from having a crime to occur in the community. So thank you for raising that, sir. It's very important. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, I live right here on the park, and I really appreciate you guys coming out and addressing this important issue. It's a policy problem. It's a threat to life and liberty. But a couple of points, and you, Chief and Mayor, you may address whichever one you want of these 3 points. But one, this is sort of, a hipster park with, a lot of us here who clearly are concerned about gun violence, but don't necessarily have illegal guns. I think perhaps an event, a conference like this, should also be held where the gun violence occurs. So we know, you know better than I do, 2nd and V, 3rd and V, that's where it happens almost daily, just the other day, right? So maybe hold something there instead of here, or both, but just as an idea. Secondly, it all comes down to the officers on the ground, right? Not just policymakers in the Wilson building, but officers on the ground. The other day we had a shooting right here on 1st Street, this very block behind our house. On the street. And I witnessed it. I saw the people shooting in the air. They were just shooting in the air. It was just stupid. And I called police. Cops came out. Didn't give a damn, okay? Looked around, kicked a bunch of rocks with their feet, and left. I went over there afterwards. This was during the height of COVID, so we were like, no contact. I went out there afterwards with my unprofessional, non-trained eyes, saw 5 shell casings. I called them again. They were like, we've already sent somebody out. Nobody came. What am I supposed to do? I picked up some gloves, put them in the Ziploc bag. I was like, well, evidence, but I guess nobody gives a damn, okay? So that's a problem. Third point, we have repeat offenders who come around here who graduate, who are young kids, who graduate from just stealing bikes, breaking into windows, and the carjackings that have happened here all the time. I mean, I've witnessed it with my own eyes, the kid crouching. They graduate to more serious things, as you know. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid threw rocks and glass bulbs at me at Charles Tavern, sitting there during lunch hour. 3 officers came, and the kid grabbed water, threw it at your officers, threw it at the water cup at the officers. The officers didn't do anything, and I asked them afterwards, why did you let the kid go? He threw rocks at us, light bulbs, punched one of us in the face, and he threw water at you and called you a white bitch. What is happening here? Mm-hmm. Okay? And the officer said, we have a standing order from the chief of police, that would be you, I presume, not to arrest anybody who's a minor unless it's a felony. I'm like, the kid threw rocks at me and punched my buddy in the face, and he threw water at you, officer. That does not seem right. And those kids are the same kids who are then going to come around 6 months later with a gun they found in their, cousin's, basement or something. And then since there's impunity and they literally can go if they self-identify, that's what the officer said. Oh, he self-identified. I'm like, how? Kid doesn't even have a driver's license. He says, oh, I live at First and U. Okay, I guess I got to take that at face value. I'm not advocating for more incarceration of juveniles, but something clearly is wrong with that policy. And
first of all, let me address those. First of all, that's not a policy. I don't know when these events happen. I got you. When did these events happen, sir?
This summer, Charles Tavern. You remember
this summer, Charles Tavern. So let me address all 3 of those points. That is not a policy of the Metropolitan Police Department. And any officer that said that, I mean, that's something, I think the commander of that district is here. That's something that we need to deal with, because those types of police officers, I don't want them in the department if that's the type of service that they're going to be delivered, period. right? There's no standing order from the chief of police to not. I'll go all around this town talking about accountability. So trust me, I'm the last one that's going to talk about we need to be sending somebody on their way. Now, when you talk about juveniles who are committing crimes in the city and graduating to other crimes, that is a real issue. When you look at our carjackings, for example, and the number of juveniles that we've arrested, 68% of the young people, of the individuals, of the 125 that have been arrested for carjacking have been juveniles. So trust me, I'm going to be the first one that say we got to hold people accountable when they do things like that make communities unsafe. And if we have officers who said that, who did that, who don't give a darn about how they treat community members, those are not police officers that we want here, and that's something that we will deal with. The other point that you made in terms of the officers if the officer was kicking a shell casing around or something like that, again, that is unacceptable behavior. It's a violation of our policy. It's a violation of our procedures in terms of how we track firearms, how we track illegal firearms in the District of Columbia. That officer had a responsibility to not only respond to that scene, but respond to that scene, recover those shell casings for ballistic purposes, and process that further from there. It's unacceptable behavior. And again, I'm encouraging. Where's the commander at? Right here. Please talk to this gentleman here before we leave, because that's something that we need to get to the bottom of, and we can track that. We can track who responded to that call. You tell us when it was you called in. That's something that we can track. And if they didn't do their job, then guess what? There's a way to deal with that. There's a process to deal with that. And the third thing that you mentioned was hey, do this someplace else. I do this in communities all across our city. It just so happened that this press conference is here. And a lot of times when I'm out and I'm talking to communities, I'm talking to residents, I'm just out there and there's not a lot of cameras around. But we're having this conversation in Ward 8, Ward 5, Ward 4, Ward 3. It doesn't matter. I'm going to have this conversation because the issue is that important. And one of the reasons why it's important to have that conversation across the board is because gun violence, when you talk about guns, I think one of the news media stations did an image of where we recovered firearms from in the District of Columbia. Guess what? It touches all wards. All wards, Ward 1, 2, 3, it touches all wards. So it's important that we let residents know across our city that we care, we're committed, and we're going to do the things that we need to do to get these guns off our street. I appreciate you bringing those issues up. Please see the commander before you leave, sir. Those are issues that we need to get to the bottom of. I thank you for your comments.
Hi, I am a neighborhood resident. I live on the park. I'm also a board member of the nonprofit that maintains and operates the park for the community. And this has always been a problem since I think, for at least probably the past decade or so. But since we've been having more construction and the Northeast Tunnel project going on, a lot of people are now using these alleyways as like throughways for, to avoid First Street and to avoid North Capitol Street. And, during COVID, we have a lot more people that are using the park because it's an outdoor space and they're coming from not just the neighborhood, but from all over the city. And we have kids back here, we have pets, and we just really need a way to keep these alleys safer with speeding traffic. We've contacted as a board since June our ANC commissioners, our McDuffie's office, with little to no response. I have a timeline here that shows all of the times that we've contacted. We have been able to speak to one person, Merica.
Yeah, I'm meeting with someone this afternoon here from Ddot.
But we just need a little bit of support from the city and from the government.
What do you think would be helpful?
Speed humps.
Okay.
We've been told that Ddot rarely approves speed humps in alleyways, which I understand, but these alleyways
where
are
you get the trash. Yes. Okay.
These alleyways are just a little bit different. And I mean, somebody's going to get hit and killed. It's going to be a kid. It's going to be a pet. It's going to be a person. And we just really need some help from the city.
Okay. So you say you have a meeting with Ddot today?
We have a meeting with Ddot today. So
okay.
One person who preemptively told us that this probably would not be approved, but she'd be happy to come out here and meet us.
Okay. So let's take a look at what Ddot comes back with, and then we can talk some more about it. I guess it's been a couple of months now. We streamlined some processes at Ddot. And to be perfectly candid, some people love it, some people don't. Because part of the process means we streamline the number of community engagement meetings we would have. And so typically a question like putting speed humps anywhere requires a percentage of neighbors to say, hey, I know about it and I agree with it, and I'm going to put my name on a petition. And, it's not always a slam dunk, one way or the other. So what I've instructed Ddot to do is, regardless of the number of community engagements that we have, if they determine upon an analysis that we need that for safety, then that is how we will proceed. So it is helpful, however, when we have somebody from Ddot coming out to do an assessment, that there is some engagement with the community, and the consensus is good too. But if we determine that it's a safety issue that will benefit from one of these interventions, it could be speed bumps, they could recommend something else, then that's what we would do. But thanks for bringing it to my attention. And you provided just a kind of another example of COVID has upended some things in positive ways too. There's space that we've reclaimed for public use. There are people who haven't been on a bike or walked their dog or walked around their neighborhood a mile every morning that are now doing that. And that gives us some opportunities to re-engage how we're looking at some of our neighborhood and downtown public space. Thank you. Any other community questions?
Can I ask? I'm also a neighbor here, live on the park, and want to thank you all again for coming and for working on these important issues. I want to bring one other up. My husband and I were foster parents here in D.C., and being a parent means driving all over the place. Being a foster parent in D.C. means driving even more. There's appointments all over the place, and it's dangerous to drive around the city right now. We need you to resume enforcing the traffic laws. Every single day, I see somebody doing something reckless and crazy that we didn't see before COVID and before, we pulled back from some of this. And unfortunately, there's a small percentage of people who, take the opportunity knowing that they're not going to be stopped to do whatever the hell they want. And that's happening every single day. Literally every day I see somebody do something insane, and kids are getting hit by cars. We know that. My foster son's classmate was hit on 4th Street Thursday in a traffic incident. So please do it fairly, do it equitably, but please resume enforcing the traffic laws.
Well, thank you. So let me be clear about something. We never stopped enforcing traffic laws. We did stop at some points during the height of the pandemic of parking violations and the like to keep our DPW teams safe. But more than that, the chief, working with Ddot, working with schools and other DC agencies, are also very focused on more traffic enforcement from MPD. Now, there's, I don't have to remind you of the police stop debate that's going on, that there's some people concerned about the police stopping cars. But they have a job to do when it comes to maintaining traffic safety, and the chief is very, very focused on making sure that MPD can be a part of that solution. I will tell you just in advance, we're really focused on an initiative around schools, and I look forward to sharing that with the community when it's fully baked. All right, thank you, everybody.